Debate, les prises de débat. The Honourable Member for York South-Weston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I spent 33 years as a union negotiator, and this action by the Conservative government has destroyed the balance that was created by the good men and women of this country who crafted our labor legislation years and years ago. The labor legislation that we have in this country was deliberately exported by this country to the fledgling countries of Eastern Europe when they became democracies, because our model was seen as a model for the world. This kind of action undermines that model. It undermines the very ability for the balance to continue in our labor relations in this country when one party is able to turn to their masters, the government, and say, please intervene and take sides in this dispute, which is, despite the protestations, Mr. Speaker, of the other side of this House, exactly what has taken place. We have upset the balance of labor relations, and we are forever now going to have labor relations, particularly in the federal sphere, but don't think the provinces aren't watching what's going on here. And labor relations with police, with fire, with ambulance services that are essential services will now be paying attention because the government has decided it can incorporate in legislation a guideline for an arbitrator that takes one side over the other. This guideline is all about the employer, not about what's fair to the employees. So, Mr. Speaker, we run the risk here of destroying years and years and years of practice, of precedent, and of jurisprudence with this, what seems to be a very simple act by the other side. It's not enough that the government has decided that they need to take sides. They didn't let the process actually finish. In all of my years as a labor negotiator, on many, many occasions, the parties used the strike deadline itself as the mechanism by which a collective agreement was reached. And in my own experience, that's probably a couple of dozen occasions where we got to the 11th hour, 11:59. It's no surprise that Canadian legislation picks midnight as the time that a strike can commence, because that's the time that people are at their most likely to reach an agreement. They aren't most likely to reach an agreement 3 days before when they give notice, which is what happened in this case. They're most likely to actually reach that agreement at midnight. That's when it happens. That's when both sides look at the cards on the table and decide this isn't worth a strike. And 99 times out of 100, that's exactly what happens. But this government and the minister has not allowed that process to reach its full conclusion. And that is shameful. And that is destroying the Canadian labor relations model that we so gleefully exported to the rest of the world as a model for the world to take. In terms of the notion that Air Canada is somehow special and an essential service, the minister suggested that it's bigger than GM, bigger than Chrysler, and we don't legislate them back to work. Well, the minister forgot to tell us that GM has shrunk enormously under their watch. They've closed 4 plants. No wonder they're small. It's because the jobs are disappearing in this country. The government's job creation strategy is a job abandoning strategy. And they did not interfere in EMB or in Stelco, where jobs were fleeing the country. And that is shameful on the part of this government, that they would abandon some workers and then step in and side with another bunch of Canadian company directors who have decided that they need this collective agreement, and they're willing to put spring break, for whatever it means, in jeopardy. It wasn't the union that put it in jeopardy in the case of the pilots. It was management that put it in jeopardy. And it's management that has very deliberately done that in order to provoke the government. Make no bones about it. That's precisely what's going on here. How much time do I have left, Mr. Speaker? 2 minutes. Thank you. There's an awful lot of noise here, Mr. Speaker.
Too much noise.
The other notion that is missed here by this government is the notion that was spoken about by my colleague from Nanaimo Cowichan about worker resentment. These workers are workers who gave up a lot, who gave large concessions 9 years ago when Air Canada was in trouble. And those workers have taken nothing since. Virtually no gains since, back to that point. These are very important workers, Mr. Speaker. These are people who keep the planes flying, both mechanically and physically. And I certainly don't want to be on a plane where those workers resent this government, where those workers are resentful of the choices that they've been forced to make. And I certainly don't think any of them would do anything stupid. But I also don't think it is smart of this government to be provoking the workers of this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.